I first learned what it's like to be an entrepreneur 20 years ago. It was the year 2000, and I was living in Los Angeles, in what you could call the epicenter of the golden age of the internet. Companies like Yahoo, eBay, Google, Amazon, all these companies were literally a couple of years old. And it was so long ago that Netflix was still sending people DVDs by mail, and Mark Zuckerberg was still in high school. And so there I was, a 29-year-old vice president of sales at CBS Television in Los Angeles, surrounded by people my age or even younger who were leaving their cushy corporate jobs to start something new, to change the world, and to become millionaires, at least on paper. And so I took a deep breath, and I thought, this is something I can't leave out. So I partnered with my brother. We went out, we raised $1.5 million in $50,000 increments from angel investors. We moved to Budapest, Hungary, and we launched what we call the Yahoo of Central Eastern Europe, a network of local language portal sites targeting local internet users in these emerging markets. We ended up building the company and growing it and ultimately selling it in a mere 18 months. It felt like 18 years. You see, parts of the experience were just amazing. I mean, creating something out of nothing, how awesome is that? Or getting people to be passionate about your vision, getting them to sign on board, whether they're investors or clients or future employees. Of closing that first big deal that justifies the risk you took. But there were other parts that were absolutely devastating. The series of unexpected obstacles, things that you couldn't even imagine could happen, were happening, and you had to overcome those on a day-to-day basis. Arguments with your partners and your investors about strategy, managing cash flow. All of these created this feeling that when you're an entrepreneur, you're sort of like on this emotional roller coaster that never ends, right? There are moments when you're going up and you reach the top of that 80-meter high track, and you're looking out at the world and you're just looking down at everything, and you feel like you're at the center of the universe. And then seconds later, you're plummeting down into the depths, screaming at the top of your lungs, and people around you are just laughing. How familiar is that for those of you out there who have built or are building a business? Well, look, the fact is that very few people can actually ride that roller coaster for very long. Statistics show that about 90% of startups actually fail within 2 years. Less than half of small businesses survive past their 5th year. So it begs the question, what is it that those entrepreneurs that stay in that roller coaster, that ride it to a long-term, sustainable, profitable business, what do they do differently than everybody else? Well, I've had the privilege of working with some amazing entrepreneurs. In the years after I sold my business, I went back into the corporate world. I built a pretty significant presence in the international media business. I left to become an angel investor, and to this day, I actually work as a startup mentor, working with business-to-business tech startups, helping them scale their sales globally and to generate predictable recurring revenues. I've also studied the path of some very well-known, almost historical figures in entrepreneurship. And see, what I've discovered is that there is a unique set of qualities that the world's greatest entrepreneurs have. I call this the entrepreneur's secret, and it's what differentiates those who thrive versus those who barely survive. The greatest entrepreneurs have focus. They have a very clear vision for what they want to achieve and a path that will get them there. They're agile. They solve problems quickly. And they build execution momentum. And they're very persistent. They have an unwavering belief in their mission, and they stop at nothing until they achieve it. When I think of focus, the first person that comes to mind is Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer. He's legendary in his insistence on doing a few things really well. Simplicity was at the center, the epicenter of everything he did, as reflected in the products that we buy from Apple today. And you know, I saw Steve Jobs speak, not personally, but through video, to a group of business people in Southern California. He was 25 at the time. It was around 1980. And he was talking about how the single biggest obstacle for growth among computer companies at the time was to break down the barrier that existed between people and the computer. You see, at the time, you basically had to learn how to program in order to use a computer. And so he said he was quite confident that Apple, who at the time, by the way, had a single product, they were 4 years old and they had a single product, the Apple II desktop computer, he thought the company was particularly well positioned to solve for this problem because their fundamental philosophy was to create a personal relationship between an individual and a computer, and to help people solve problems through this relationship. Now, a bit of context, this is 1980. There was no such thing as the internet. There was no such thing as the World Wide Web. People didn't have smartphones in their pockets. There were no apps. There was not even a laptop computer. And here I was, preparing to go to bed for the evening, watching Steve Jobs speak on YouTube while holding an iPad in my lap. This guy had a clear focus for what he believed his company would achieve. Of course, he would go on then to introduce a whole range of products that brought this focus to life. And actually, that's a critical element of focus. It's not just about having this amazing vision, but it's actually figuring out how do you make that vision come to life. And so entrepreneurs do that in three ways. They create a clear pathway that leads to their desired outcome. They develop products that people will buy. They develop sales and marketing strategies that scale. They hire people who are capable of execution. They raise the necessary funding needed in order to bring their business to life. They also know how to say no to opportunities. The shiny object syndrome, which so many entrepreneurs suffer from. The next best thing, the thing that I have to do, the thing that's out of focus. Really successful entrepreneurs ignore those. The client that doesn't fit your profile, the partnership that just doesn't seem to make sense, they say no to those opportunities. A guy named Tim Ferriss, an entrepreneur and an author who had a book called The 4-Hour Workweek, said, it's important to either say hell yes or a flat no to things, because if you don't, kind of cool is going to fill up your calendar and make you wonder what the hell happened and what did I do for the past year. Entrepreneurs apply focus also by evaluating their progress on an ongoing basis. They see where they want to be and where they are, and they work to fill that gap as quickly as possible. So my question to you, do you have a clear vision for your business and a plan to bring it to life? Do you say no to things that are out of focus? Do you evaluate and adjust accordingly? You entrepreneurs out there who are building businesses as we speak today. The second quality that successful entrepreneurs have is they have agility. Now, agility, traditionally, is the ability to move your body in different positions while you're in active motion. Think of like a basketball player dribbling down the court and weaving through the defenders. Yeah, that's agility. Mental agility is the ability to solve problems quickly under intense pressure. Elon Musk is very popular these days. He's in the news quite a bit. But before he was a Twitter influencer, he was just another guy trying to build a business. And so in 2008, he invested a bunch of his money that he made from an exit at PayPal into building Tesla and SpaceX. But the problem was, both of these companies were bleeding cash. He was so broke, he was literally sleeping on his friend's couch because he didn't have money to pay the rent. And so he had a really interesting solution to a very difficult problem. You see, he was in negotiations with NASA to build space rockets that he could then use for commercial purposes. Except NASA always paid their suppliers after they delivered. But he was able to negotiate a $1.5 billion pre-order from NASA that enabled him to fund the development of the Falcon 9 spacecraft, which ultimately was the source of 19 successful commercial missions to space. He funneled that money also into Tesla and saved the company from sure ruin. Well, the rest, as they say, is history. So how do entrepreneurs apply agility in their day-to-day lives? Well, they focus on solutions and not on problems. Product development is slow, hire more or better programmers. Your sales not getting traction, revisit your value proposition and your product offering. Is your team not up to snuff? Hire better people. Do you not have the money? Then save costs in the short term and find a long-term funding solution. They also build execution momentum. They constantly get into the habit of problem solving. And when you get into the habit of problem solving, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You build energy, you build momentum until you ultimately achieve that feeling that I'm sure many of you have experienced at some point in your life, that sense of flow, when everything is falling into place, when you feel like you can do no wrong. Well, successful entrepreneurs achieve flow and capture that on an ongoing basis. And they also adapt to change and to opportunities, unexpected opportunities. There's a company that I worked with called Colmut Robotics. They basically are a development team of scientists who put together large-scale outdoor drone light shows. You might have seen these. They're a good replacement for fireworks these days. And as I was working with them, they were presented with an interesting opportunity. The British royal family was looking for a company to do a drone light show for a Christmas party at Buckingham Palace, just before Christmas in 2018. This opportunity came across their desk, and through various happenstance, they managed to get the opportunity to do so. But there was a problem. You see, generally it takes 3 months to put together a show like this. They had 3 weeks. So they went through the whole process. They solved all the logistics of travel and execution and design. But there was one single problem that they couldn't get their heads around. According to the UK regulations, you needed to get the British aviation authorities' permission to fly drones over central London, understandably. So one of the founders did a bit of research and discovered that, in fact, there was one exception to this particular rule, and that was the airspace above Buckingham Palace. That airspace was exclusively under the authority of the Queen of England. So we actually were able to contact Prince Andrew, her son, and through a connection, the prince asked his mother for permission to fly drones over Buckingham Palace in London. And so I remember when we actually were there in Buckingham Palace Gardens, the royal family standing next to me, I peered up at the back among the thousands of windows behind me, and I actually saw the Queen of England looking out and at this amazing drone light show pictured here with a Christmas tree and a falling star. And later it got back to us that the Queen actually said that the performance was quite impressive. Now, I like to think that actually what she meant to say was it was frickin' awesome. So my question to you is, how agile are you? Are you focused more on solutions than problems? Do you move things forward with speed and efficiency? Do you take advantage of unexpected opportunities when they are presented to you? The third quality that is an integral part of the entrepreneur's secret is persistence. Now, persistence is actually quite different, I think, in character than focus and agility. You can actually learn to be more focused. You can learn to be more agile over time as you gain experience. But I think you can only really be persistent with something that you fundamentally, at your very core, believe to be true. And you're so passionate about it that you just cannot imagine it being any other way. Now, I could go here and talk to you about some official psychological studies about the nature of persistence and its impact on entrepreneurship, but instead, I'm going to show you a simple chart that every single entrepreneur here should be able to relate to. It's called the emotional journey of creating anything great. We all start our businesses at the top left-hand corner. This is the best idea ever. And then we get into the process of execution, and we slowly start to dip down towards the abyss until we say, this sucks, man. I have no idea what I am doing. And then you're faced with that precipice, that dark swamp of despair, and that tiny bridge, that rickety bridge, that rope bridge, is what is called persistence. And when you cross that dark swamp of despair, you think you're done, but you're not, because you're going to actually make that trip over and over and over and over again. Until one day, one bright and beautiful day, you will get onto the other side of that bridge and start ascending to the point where you can say, this is one of the things I am most proud of ever doing. I think entrepreneurs bring persistence to life in two ways. First, they have an unwavering belief in their company's mission. I saw an interview with Mark Zuckerberg in 2010. It was on the news program 60 Minutes in the United States. He was 26, 27 at the time. And the reporter asks him, is there anything that you've made as a decision that went counter to what your people wanted to achieve? And Mark, in his slightly geeky way, kind of looks back and says, well, I guess it was the time that we wanted to sell the company and we got an offer. And he says, we had the opportunity to sell the company to Yahoo for $1 billion, and I turned it down because we just weren't done yet. And I thought to myself, what sort of sense of mission do you have to be 25 years old, 2.5 years after you launched a company, to turn down $1 billion for your company? Raise your hands if you would have said, no thanks. All right, some hardcore entrepreneurs. Well, he would then ultimately take Facebook public. It would be worth $50 billion at its public offering, and today Facebook is worth about $500 billion, and it has redefined the way we communicate around the world. The other way in which entrepreneurs exhibit mental toughness is persistence is through mental toughness. And here I just want to share with you a very personal story. I've got a good friend. We went to university together. His name is Mark, and we graduated from Cornell University together with advanced degrees, and so many of our friends went off to work in banks and consulting companies and advertising agencies, and we would get together every year and talk about what we were doing. But Mark, he was different. He graduated with an engineering degree, and he said, you know what, I don't want to work for a big company. I want to create something. And so each year we would meet with Mark, and there we were making our big salaries, and poor Mark with his little company was plugging away, trying to do something entrepreneurial. He would sell his company a few years later for $100 million with virtually no outside investment. I ran into him and asked him recently, Mark, what is it that you actually did differently? What is it that made you successful in what you are as an entrepreneur? And he said, look, man, in 9 years, I went home 4 times and I told my wife that I'm done. I don't have enough money to pay my salary. I don't have enough money to pay rent. I don't have enough money to pay my people. But somehow, somewhere, I found a solution. And the difference between me, he says, and all those other people is that I just stuck with it. I didn't give up. So with that, I just want to tell you that the entrepreneur's secret is not about overnight success. It is about focus, about knowing what your vision is and how you will get there. Is it about having agility to solve problems quickly and efficiently to build execution momentum? And it is about persistence, about making sure that you get through the tough times. And so, in closing, I just want to issue a challenge to all of you entrepreneurs out there. Grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 across these 3 different categories. See where you are today and decide where you want to be a year from today. And take a single action, one single step that will get you closer to learning the entrepreneur's secret and applying it to your own business so that one day you too can experience the amazing value and joy of building a globally successful business. Thank you very much for your communication.